I wanted to talk about a serious issue, underemployment and unemployment. Unfortunately, these two topics have impacted me personally. And so I want to just share what I've learned through the process of trying to get back to work in the hope that maybe it can help someone else. Unfortunately, 18 million Americans are unemployed, and 10 are what we consider underemployed. Underemployment is working less than full time when you want full time. So, working part time or three quarters time because that's all you're able to get. We also define underemployment as not using your full capabilities, not using your college degree, perhaps, or the skills that you've acquired over your whole lifetime. People who are underemployed often take low wage or low skilled jobs because that's all they can get, and they feel that getting some income is better than no income at all. Unfortunately, there's a significant impact to being unemployed and underemployed. And really, I'm talking about people who are long term unemployed and underemployed. We define long term unemployment and underemployment as 27 weeks without any kind of meaningful work. So, roughly a little over 2 years. Long term unemployment, though, and underemployment can extend 3, 4, 5 years for many people. And the sad reality is that many people just give up looking for work like they used to do and just accept that they're going to be unemployed for the rest of their life. Underemployment and unemployment obviously results in major financial loss, challenges with self-esteem of not feeling like you're good enough to be in the workforce or that you belong in the workforce, mental health issues like anxiety and depression. And we know that there's a big correlation between anxiety and depression and physical health concerns. A recent study showed that people who were out of work for long term developed at least one chronic health condition, if not more. When workers try to re-enter the workplace, they're often met with concerns around ageism or suspicion around why you've been absent from the workplace. Even with logical explanations, sometimes employers really think that there's something, quote, something wrong with someone, when in fact it's just a circumstance that can't be avoided. I myself, I'm 53 in full disclosure. I encountered some ageism applying for a job recently where someone said to me, you do realize that this job is fast paced. I don't know whether you're able to work in a fast paced environment. Um, and the reality is that many Americans are unaware of what the normal signs of aging are. And we assume that all people who age somehow have decline, when in fact, decline in your older years is a sign that there's a problem, not a normal stage of aging. So, what can you do? How can you get back into the workplace? And like I said at the beginning of this, I wanted to share what I've been doing and what's worked for me, and that maybe some of these tips and techniques can work for you too. The first piece, I think, is really being focused on what you can control. When you do have a job, no matter what that job is, show up positive, show up really energized and positive, that you're putting all of yourself into whatever it is that you're taking on. People don't need to know that you're working on maybe finding something more secure and long term. Just focus on what you can do in that particular workplace. Also, take this as an opportunity to rethink what you were doing. For myself, the first probably 18 months that I was out of work, I kept trying to apply for the same job that I used to work in when that work wasn't really available for me anymore. And just accepting that maybe you can't go back to what you used to do is such an enormous hurdle, but so important to get past so you can move forward and find something to do. You figure out how you can take your core skill set and apply it to something completely different. And if you watched my other video around career and skill assessment tests, maybe take a skill and aptitude test to figure out how you can retool what you're doing in your focus and just change direction altogether. So, lots of things to think about in terms of getting unstuck, of how do you not go back to what you were doing and maybe figure out something completely different that you never imagined yourself doing, in your life. The key thing to realize, and this is probably the hardest thing to realize, is that this has nothing to do with your capabilities. Um, it's just a matter of circumstances. So, what can you do? Well, this is really where your professional network comes in handy. And, maybe even eating a little humble pie, as they say. I know this was probably one of the hardest things for me was to go to people and say, look, I've been without a job for a while and I'm really eager to get back to the workforce and I'm willing to take on, a variety of different roles to get myself back out there and just be honest with people. I think about all of the people who I've made a connection for in the past or I helped open a door to get a job. Go back to those people and say, it's okay to call out a favor. Remember that time that I helped you get into such and such organization? Well, I'm wondering if you could help me now by just introducing me to one person that you know. Another thing we can do is share our knowledge by teaching. So, one of the things I've done to help get myself kind of back in the saddle and earn some income is adjunct teaching at a university. There are so many open positions right now for educators at the undergraduate, graduate level, technical schools, even high schools. You can for sure find a job, even if it's just teaching one class a semester, which is all really I do is teach one class a semester. You can get back to teaching in some way. Another idea, and I've done this myself, if you have a little money to work with, and this really all depends on what your finances are, but even if you have, $20, $30 that you can spare maybe once a month, go to these office rental spaces. They have them all over the area. Trying to think of the group that I worked with. Anyway, it was an app on your phone, and you can um, find an office space in your local area. I found one in a large metropolitan area, drove there, went in. There's so many people there. And I went to the coffee. Many of these places have like free coffee and water. I went to the coffee station, made myself a cup of coffee, and wound up striking up a conversation with somebody else also using that space. And so, will it result in work? Who knows? But the more people we talk to, the more people we're going to get in contact with who can help us. Another piece of advice that I got early on, and it took me, I honestly, a while to implement, was to update my resume and my LinkedIn profile. Mainly what you wanna do is get sort of an edgy image of yourself instead of maybe that typical headshot. You put in something really cool and edgy and maybe, part of your face or just something kinda interesting and, um the other thing I think too, and this is what I wound up doing, is take all of those dates off of your college degrees. Nobody needs to know that you got a bachelor's degree in the 80s or 90s. The point is that you have a bachelor's degree in a particular topic. If you've got a long, long work history, I might take some of those earlier experiences off, condense some other experiences, and maybe move some of the date information off altogether, or just kind of work in general time frames. People look at your LinkedIn profile when they're considering you for a job. They look at your resume, and if they're looking at a graduation date in the 80s, they're going to do some calculations about how old you are. And now we're right back to the ageism piece. If you can present yourself without any kind of inclination as to what your age might be, then who cares, right? You're just trying to put your best foot forward and show up as your best self and not in age or anything else. The other thing is look at Toastmasters. I recently went to a couple of Toastmaster meetings. If you're new to Toastmasters, it's $20 for the year, so not a bad amount of money to join a new organization. Consider joining Toastmasters or create your own meetup group. Meetup.com, which I belong to. I went out and created a group getting back to work and thinking, I know there are people who are in the same circumstance that I am. I don't belong to Facebook, but if you have a Facebook account, create a group on Facebook for people, life transitions or getting back to work or starting a new journey, or just give it a nice name, and try to, get people together who share a common purpose. Also, look at your local economic development council or business association. So, interestingly, and people won't necessarily know this if they don't make the right connections, but there is grant money both at the federal and the state level of getting people who are displaced back into work, particularly around hard hit industries, healthcare, hospitality, among some of those industries. Contact the group, look at, say, explain your situation and see if you qualify for one of the grants that they're currently administering or looking to achieve. It may not be what you really thought you would do. You may not have thought of going into healthcare or a hospitality job, but don't write it off completely either. Think about whether or not this is something you might be interested in doing. Um, And then I think the key piece is just to remember that this is a new journey. You're working on towards a new way of living and working. Before the pandemic, I spent 18 years on the road, getting on a plane every Monday, home every Thursday. And that first 18 months really was difficult for me. I couldn't imagine what I was going to do with the rest of my life. Life seems so different, but I'm taking this as an opportunity of if I really take a step back and examine my life, I needed that break from the road. I needed to get off the road after 18 years. And I look at it this way, that maybe the universe or God or life or whatever you want to call it forced me into a new lifestyle. And now I'm enjoying being home. I got two cats. Um, I do things in the area, and I'm just trying to, like I said, put our lives back together and find a new way of working. I hope this was helpful. Feel free to comment on this video about your own experience, or if you've tried to do something that I didn't mention here. I think everybody would love to hear that as well. Thanks so much. Bye bye.